Well, good morning and welcome to the Hope Chronicles on Wednesday, the 1st of April. A number of years ago, my family and I were trying to consider whether to take up the offer of a ministry position in the USA for a second time. And I was a busy lawyer at that time, but I was thinking, I was praying, I was reading the Bible, I was taking wise counsel, but I still couldn't seem to hear from God. And sort of in desperation, I ended up going and spending 3 days living in a monastery with some monks. And a lot of the time that I was there was in silence. And what surprised me was that, contrary to my belief that God wasn't speaking to me, he was speaking clearly, he was speaking loudly. It was just that the ambient noise in my life was so pervasive, I just couldn't hear him. And I think in these days where we are trying to get a word from God, we're trying to connect with God, to hear from him, to feel his presence, we need to think about spiritual separation with God, but we also need to think about physical separation so that we can do that. In the Gospel of Luke chapter 5, verses 15 and 16, Luke writes this: "Yet the news about Jesus spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." And it seems to me that if Jesus himself needed to get away in order to be able to really pray, then probably so do we. Well, what does that look like? Well, it might look like for you creating a space in your home where you meet with God, where a particular chair or part of the living room or maybe in your bedroom, that is somewhere that with regularity you go and you meet with God. Now, because of the busyness of your household, it might be that trying to get somewhere that is just your space is really difficult. And maybe you have to create a space and a time. Maybe it's about getting up at 6 in the morning when no one else is up to just sit and be with God. Because there's a profundity of physical separation and spiritual separation with God, where our soul resonates with God and we are able to hear him in the quiet, in the isolation, often in ways that we can't with the ambient humdrum noise of the day. So I really want you to think about that today. How can you get alone with God? And where can you get alone with God? And I really do want to encourage you to a regularity of that. Even if it's 5 minutes, try fixing a place and a time for the next 7 days that say at 7 a.m. every morning, I'm just going to sit and talk to God. And try and do that for at least 7 days and see what impact that makes on your sense of closeness with God, your relationship with him, and the power and efficacy of your prayers. So my prayer is that you would find some solitude and silence with God today, and it would bear real fruit in your life and grow your faith. Well, the Lord's blessings to you today.